supervision of a Sinai or male relative. Throughout the late Republican and Imperial eras, a declining birth rate among the elite, and a corresponding increase among commoners was cause of concern for many gents. Augustus tried to address this through state intervention, offering financial and other rewards to any woman who gave birth to 3 or more children, and penalizing the childless. The latter was much resented, and the former had seemingly negligible results. Aristocratic women seem to have been increasingly disinclined to childbearing. It carried a high risk of mortality to mothers, and a deal of inconvenience thereafter for those who preferred an independent lifestyle. 199. Time and dates. Roman hours were counted ordinally from dawn to dawn. Thus, if sunrise was at 6 a.m., then 6 to 7 a.m. was called first hour, 12 noon to 1 p.m. the 6th hour, and so on. Midday was called meridies, and it is from this word taught the terms an, ante-meridian, and p.m., post-meridian, stem. The English word noon comes from nona, 9th hour, which referred to 3 p.m. in ancient Rome. The Romans had clocks, horologia, which included giant public sundials, solaria, and water clocks, clepsydra. The ancient Roman week originally had 8 days, which were identified by letters A to H, with the 8th day being the nundinum or market day, a kind of weekend when farmers sold their produce on the streets. The 7-day week, first introduced from the East during the early Empire, was officially adopted during the reign of Constantine. Romans named weekdays after celestial bodies from at least the 1st century AD, a custom that was inherited by other peoples and is still found in many modern languages, including English. Roman months had 3 important days: the calends, first day of each month, always in plural; the ides, 13th or 15th of the month; and the nuns, 9th day before the ides, inclusive, i.e. 5th or 7th of the month. Other days were counted backwards from the next one of these days. For example, what we call the 6th of February, the Romans called antediemated as Februarius, inclusively the 8th day before the ides of February, which was 13 February. The Roman year originally had 10 months from Martius, March, to December, with the winter period note included in the calendar. The first 4 months were named after gods: Martius, Aprilis, Maius, Junius, and Theathus were numbered: Quintilis, Sextilis, September, October, November, and December. Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome, 716–673 BC, is said to have introduced the months of January and February, both also named after gods, beginning the 12-month calendar still in use today. In 44 BC, the month Quintilis was renamed to Julius, July, after Julius Caesar, and in 8 BC, Sextilis was renamed to Augustus, August, after Augustus Caesar. The Romans had several ways of tracking years. One widespread way was the consular dating, which identified years by the 2 consuls who ruled each year. Their term was limited to 1 year. It was introduced in the Republic and continued to be used in the Empire, even though the consular post was reduced to a ceremonial one during that latter period. Another way, introduced in the late 3rd century AD, was counting years from Fiendictio, a 15-year period based on the announcement of the delivery of food and other goods to the government. Another way, less popular but more similar to the way we currently count years, was AB Urkundata, which counted years from the mythical foundation of Rome in 753 BC. Thus, the year 653 BC would be 100 AUC, 1000 AD would be 1752 AUC, as there was no year 0 AD or BC, and so on. Culture. The 7 hills of Rome. Life in ancient Rome revolved around the city of Rome, located on 7 hills. The city had a vast number of monumental structures like the Colosseum, the Trojans' Forum and the Pantheon. It had theatres, gymnasiums, marketplaces, functional sewers, bath complexes complete with libraries and shops, and fountains with fresh drinking water supplied by hundreds of miles of aqueducts. Throughout the territory under the control of ancient Rome, residential architecture ranged from modest houses to country villas. In the capital city of Rome, there were imperial residences on the elegant Palatine Hill, from which the word palace derives. The low plebeian and middle equestrian classes lived in the city centre packed into apartments, or insulae, which were almost like modern ghettos. These areas, often built by upper-class property owners were often centered upon collegia or taberna. These people provided with a free supply of grain, and entertained by gladiatorial games, were enrolled as clients of patrons among the upper-class patricians, whose assistance they sought and whose interests they upheld. Language. The native language of the Romans was Latin, an Italic language the grammar of which relies little on word order, conveying meaning through a system of affixes attached to word stems. 200. Its alphabet was based on the Etruscan alphabet, which was in turn based on the Greek alphabet. 201. Although surviving Latin literature consists almost entirely of classical Latin, an artificial and highly stylized and polished literary language from the 1st century BC, the spoken language of the Roman Empire was Vulgar Latin, which significantly differed from classical Latin in grammar and vocabulary, and eventually in pronunciation. 202. Speakers of Latin could understand both until the 7th century, when spoken Latin began to diverge so much that classical or good Latin had to be learned as a second language. 203. While Latin remained the main written language of the Roman Empire, Greek came to be the language spoken by the well-educated elite, as most of the literature studied by Romans was written in Greek. In the eastern half of the Roman Empire, which later became the Eastern Roman Empire, Latin was never able to replace Greek, and after the death of Justinian, Greek became the official language of the Eastern government. 204. The expansion of the Roman Empire spread Latin throughout Europe, and Vulgar Latin evolved into dialects in different locations, gradually shifting into many distinct Romance languages. Religion. Punishment of Ixion. In the center is Mercury holding the caduceus, and on the right Juno sits on her throne. Behind her Iris stands and gestures. On the left is Vulcan, blonde figure, standing behind the wheel, managing it, with Ixion already tied to it. Nephail sits at Mercury's feet, a Roman fresco from the eastern wall of the triclinium in the house of the Vetii, Pompeii, 4th style, 60-79 AD. Archaic Roman religion, at least concerning the gods, was made up not half-written narratives, but rather of complex interrelations between gods and humans. 205. Unlike in Greek mythology, the gods were not personified, but were vaguely defined sacred spirits called noumena. Romans also believed that every person, place or thing had its own genius, or divine soul. During the Roman Republic, Roman religion was organized under a strict system of priestly offices, which were held by men of senatorial rank. The College of Pontifices was uppermost body in this hierarchy, and its chief priest, the Pontifex Maximus, was the head of state religion. Flamens took care of the cults of various gods, while Iogas were trusted with taking the auspices. The sacred king took on to religious responsibilities of the deposed kings. In the Roman Empire, deceased emperors who had ruled well were deified by their successors and the Senate. 206. And the formalized imperial cult became increasingly prominent. As contact with the Greeks increased, the old Roman gods became increasingly associated with Greek gods. 207. Thus, Jupiter was perceived to be the same deity as Zeus, Mars became associated with Us, and Neptune with Poseidon. The Roman gods also assumed the attributes and mythologies of these Greek gods. Under the empire, the Romans absorbed the mythologies of their conquered subjects, often leading to situations in which the temples and priests of traditional Italian deities existed side by side with those of foreign gods. 208. Beginning with Emperor Nero in the 1st century AD, Roman official policy towards Christianity was negative, and at some point, being a Christian could be punishable by death. Under Emperor Diocletian, the persecution of Christians reached its peak. However, it became an officially supported religion in the Roman state under Diocletian's successor Constantine, with the signing of the Edict of Milan in 313, and quickly became dominant. All religions except Christianity were prohibited in 391 AD by an edict of Emperor Theodosius I. 209. Ethics and morality. Like many ancient cultures, concepts of ethics and morality, while sharing some commonalities with modern society, differed greatly in several important ways. Because ancient civilizations like Rome were under constant threat of attack from marauding tribes, their culture was necessarily militaristic, with martial skills being a prized attribute. 210. Whereas modern societies consider compassion a virtue, Roman society considered compassion a vice, a moral defect. Indeed, one of the primary purposes of the gladiatorial games was to inoculate Roman citizens from this weakness. 211, 210, 212. Romans instead prized virtues such as courage and conviction, virtus, a sense of duty to one's people, moderation and avoiding excess, moderatio, forgiveness and understanding, clementia, fairness, severitas, and loyalty, pietas. 213. Contrary to popular descriptions, Roman society had well-established and restrictive norms related to sexuality, though as with many societies, the lion's share of the responsibilities fell on women. Women were generally expected to be monogamous, having only a single husband during their life, univira, though this was much less regarded by the elite, especially under the empire. Women were expected to be modest in public, avoiding any provocative appearance, and to demonstrate absolute fidelity to their husbands, pudicitia. Indeed, wearing a veil was a common expectation to preserve modesty. Sex outside of marriage was generally frowned upon for men and women, and indeed was made illegal during the imperial period. 214. Nevertheless, prostitution was seen entirely differently, and indeed was an accepted and regulated practice. 215. Public demonstrations of death, violence, and brutality were used as a source of entertainment in Roman communities. However, it was also a way to maintain social order, demonstrate power, and signify communal unity. Spectators ranging from senators to women and slaves would fill into the tip levels in the Colosseum, and this was often seen as a metaphor for Rome's hierarchically ordered society. In Rome, violence was omnipresent, which is why Roman society thrived and has always rigorously appreciated it, whether it was in an arena or in an amphitheater. Rome was in origin a warrior society, and it remained their primary characteristics throughout history. Art, music and literature. Frescoes from the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii, Italy. Roman artwork dated to the mid-1st century. Women playing a kithara, from the Villa Boscorial, 40-30 BC. Roman painting styles show Greek influences, and surviving exemples are primarily frescoes used to adorn the walls and ceilings of country villas. The Roman literature includes mentions of paintings on wood, ivory, and other materials. 216, 217. Several examples of Roman painting have been found at Pompeii, and from these art historians Divide the history of Roman painting into 4 periods. The first style of Roman painting was practiced from the early 2nd century BC to the early or mid-1st century BC. It was mainly composed of imitations of marble and masonry, though sometimes including depictions of mythological characters. The second style began during the early 1st century BC and attempted to depict realistically 3-dimensional architectural features and landscapes. The third style occurred during the reign of Augustus, 27 BC 14 AD, and rejected the realism of the second style in favor of simple ornamentation. A similar